And for the garden growing business package, looking at this, as a consumer, I could totally see myself subscribing to a garden. I like fresh food for one. I will let every single garden that I grow die, unfortunately, because I'm really busy. I don't have time, and when I do have off time, it's unfortunately, as much as it probably should be dedicated to gardening and things like that. I won't do it. I know myself well enough. But if I had somebody to come and make sure my garden doesn't die, and help me walk me through how to do it, I don't even really know how to do it, to be 100% honest. But not only how to do it, but making sure that my garden stays alive and thrives and has a harvestable produce at the end of my garden growing time. That would be invaluable for me as a consumer.
Oh, absolutely. Me too. I mean, I think gardens pose a unique challenge and a unique benefit to, nearly everyone. I mean, we live in a time where people definitely want to know what's in their food.
Yeah.
And so being able to grow it on your property, gives you a guaranteed final outcome as far as what the story behind the food is.
Yep.
And also the satisfaction of enjoying a garden without the unpleasantness of having to weed it, water it, and know when to
Sure.
plant and trim and do everything
Convenience.
else.
Well, and
Uh,
knowing, because I know there's certain things you got to trim back, and the garden obviously it's not as much, but there's certain ways of doing things that are little ways of doing things that I have no idea about, and I know because I know personally from killing a lot of crops. That it's easy to do. You don't have to
oh yeah.
neglect your garden. You could be trying to take really good care of it and still have the whole thing die.
Absolutely. And there's enormous value to the consumer in this, not just for the vegetables they get at the end, but also, I mean, buying starts are expensive. You spend $5, $7 on one plant and, one silly mistake, one little oversight, and the plant dies. And, if
Yeah.
you're too far in the season, you can't replant. If it's early, you have to buy
Yep.
another one. So being, able to bring in some, skilled help to make sure that everything goes according to plan, I think would be enormously beneficial to both the business and the consumer. And
Yeah.
it's definitely something I'm certain there's the demand
Oh
for.
yeah, well, and the nice thing is it's kind of a rolling demand. I know for me, my parents are getting up there in years. Their parents are mostly passed away, and so maybe my parents want to have a garden, but they don't. They don't have the energy they used to have. They don't have they can't go sit on their knees and weed gardens. And I live in a different state than my parents do, so talk
Yeah.
about a subscription that I could get for them. They had a garden when I was growing up. Every year they had a garden and they canned their own goods and they did their own stuff and they ate the fresh vegetables and fresh fruits that came from their apple trees and their gardens. And they can't do that anymore. They're not there now. And so being able to have somebody go, it'll give them something to do, something to look forward to, some fresh, great produce that's good for them to eat. And it's just, something that I think that they would really enjoy. So not only would it be a great gift and a practical gift, but it could also be marketed in different markets as a teaching method. Because for me, I would probably keep the service indefinitely because I would figure out that I really don't have the time to take care of a garden. But for me, I've got kids. I would love to have a garden put in my backyard and for some professionals to stop by, weekly or bi-weekly or whatever it would need to be based on the size of my garden and teach us how to grow a garden. Because I think that's something that's being lost is being able to self-sustain. As a society, we're losing that really quickly. So bringing that back, I think, is a major interest of a lot of people right now at this point in history. And having these teachers basically available to stop by, maybe we will become self-sufficient and we won't subscribe to their service anymore. My family, probably not. We keep subscribing. But there may be people out there that just need a tutorial. So you could go through an entire season or maybe 2 seasons, and then these people will be self-sufficient. But by that point in time, you'd have customers to replace them and probably still be growing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there's other values in having that final crop. I mean, fruit and vegetables are expensive, especially if you're producing them
Yeah,
yourself organically.
absolutely.
There's advantages there. And I think the other thing is having that project that you can bring your family into, that you can bring your neighborhood, your community into.
Yeah.
I think it reinforces a lot of relationships. It improves the leisure aspects of your property. It gives you the fun and excitement of harvesting your own food. So I think, across the board, it's a great service, great value, something I would definitely subscribe to myself.
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. And for me, and I know I've already made this point, but I think just to reiterate it, and I with my kids, I've got 4 kids. I hope that there is never a day in America where they have to rely on growing their own food to survive. But if that day comes, I really, really, really want them to know how to do it. I think that's huge. You can call this an unnecessary expense, but I mean, to me, this is a preparation expense. This is a potential thing that will pay off, in leaps and bounds someday if you ever have to use those skills to grow a garden. Not because you want to, but because you absolutely have to. This is huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a major component of science education, which is horticulture, that I think has mainly been left off of
Oh,
a
for
lot of
sure. Absolutely.
modern academic portfolios. And I think this would bring it into the household. It would make it this fun, exciting kind of entertainment, but also
Yeah.
productive thing to be going on the property. But the other thing that occurs to me on this is one of the challenges with gardening is watering. You don't go on
Yeah.
vacation to Hawaii for a week because who's going to water the garden? So having a go-to service where you know that whether you're there or not, that things are growing, things are on autopilot, I think that everyone would want that.
Now, you've worked under our business methodology. Tell me how our way of doing things has impacted your life.
Well, it's improved my life in many different ways. I've learned to, operate in business more efficiently, more strategically, with a greater focus on win-win outcomes, where the business is profiting, but the, clients and customers are happy. So it's been a very enriching process, and I've learned a lot from you guys. You guys have that entrepreneurial spirit that just makes for good business, and so it's been just an absolute pleasure working with you guys.
And now, what about financially? How would you say your situation is different?
Well, it's been enormously personally rewarding, financially rewarding. We've been able to do things we never imagined being able to do just a few years before. Your unique approach to business has enabled us to, be more profitable than our competitors. We've had a better work-life balance, I think, than most people who, even get close to approaching our income threshold. So I think really, I mean, as rewarding as something could be, it has been for us.
Now, do you feel like our way of doing things has profitability advantages over traditional ways of doing business?
Oh, most certainly. Yeah. I think you can, tell just by our history of growth. I mean, I think, are willing to adapt our business strategies, fill any niche role that's out there, and just, capitalize on things that other businesses aren't even aware of. So, yeah, I think we, have had a much greater level of success than our competitors with more profitability and oftentimes less busy work.
Yeah, certainly. And I think too, with the startup series goes over all sorts of that kind of stuff. And just the ways that we've been luckily forced to adapt, and learn how to do things with less staff and, more technology based or more efficiency based, just really picking things apart down to the typing of emails or not. Stuff like that makes a huge difference, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Breaking things down to their kind of constituent components, seeing what you absolutely have to have, what's not necessary, and then putting your energy behind what drives, maximum productivity and profitability. And I think that's where we've had a lot of our success.
Now, Justin, what would you say to someone who is thinking about buying one of these business packages, but is maybe nervous about starting a business from scratch instead of going with a more expensive traditional franchise, or maybe nervous about something else with starting a business?
Well, I would say that, now is a very good time, I think, for someone to look at starting their own business. And I think, when you're weighing these options, say in comparison to a more expensive franchise, I think the flexibility that's afforded because you still own and have control of your own business, I think that's
Absolutely.
huge. I think that's why a lot of people start a business. They don't
Yep.
want to have to report to someone and curtail their goal and operations based on the direction of somebody else. So I
Yeah.
think you get all of those benefits. But I think the other thing that's, a major advantage is that it is lower cost. You're not paying a percentage of your income for an indefinite period. You just have the ability to take a proven model, to adapt it to your specific situation, to be given all the tools to implement your strategy and your goals and to achieve it. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, as an entrepreneur myself, obviously, that started several businesses, when I look back over what worked really well and what did not work really well, it's the unknowns that are waiting out there to just, grab you by the foot and trip you up. And that's really what I think makes businesses fail. I think there's probably two major things that make businesses fail. Number one is not knowing a system and process that's proven for success, which it takes a while to get there. And then number two is just these pitfalls that every single entrepreneur will face at some point in time or another. And having the startup series as a guide to continually reference back to me, makes all the difference in the world compared to somebody that does not have that resource. And business consultants are really, really, really expensive. It's a good way to, especially when you're in the startup phases, that's a good way to really drain profitability, is having to call somebody and pay them by the hour every time you have a question, rather than just referencing a resource that you've got on your computer.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you're getting basically a veteran business model that works.
Yeah.
And you're able to use that from the get-go. So, I mean, it's like, taking the Microsoft model when you're starting a software company. It's as good a start as you could have.
Well, Justin, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you joining me here and going over these business packages. And, for you guys there thinking about this, you can submit on our website or you can give us a call at 844-500-6620 and speak with a business launching consultant. Again, that's 844-500-6620. Thanks so much.